Hey guys, welcome back to the Friday Vlog, where we discuss activity that goes on here with the BuzWeaver channel. This includes things like current events, headlines that are in the news, social media, technology, and just items of interest that come up during the week that allow us to have a little bit of a dialogue, allows us to just kind of touch on topics that were of interest for this particular week. And it is a bit of a departure from what is typically covered here on the channel. If you guys are new here, I'd like to welcome you. And if you are a frequent viewer, I would encourage both of you guys right now to click on that watermark down there in the bottom right-hand corner to subscribe, along with hitting that notification bell so you guys will know when the next Friday Vlog is available, along with additional content that's here on the channel. This week in gaming, Firaxis released the latest update notes for Civilization VI Gathering Storm. We see that they have made a few changes to some of the newer AI and giving them a little bit more of a debuff, I guess, if you will, because they were kind of OP in certain situations and circumstances, and gave a little bit of a buff to some of the older AI, but mostly it consisted of bug fixes and just some tweaks that the game has been needing for quite some time. If you guys want to read all about that, I will leave you the patch notes down there in the published section below. Also, because so many people have been asking for the last 2 weeks, what information is out on Just Survive, what's going on with Just Survive, I wanted to produce a video, which you guys can check out up here in the top right-hand corner. And essentially it was met with a lot of the typical excitement and enthusiasm that we would get mostly from individuals leaving comments about the content, and then there was some that were a few critical. Now, I understand the criticism and some of the statements that people have made, and that was because there wasn't really anything new as far as news or anything or what the latest information was about Just Survive. This was really to just kind of let the community know that, hey, look, I'm still looking out for the game. I'm still looking to see what information there is. Let me just recap what we know and what has transpired, so those who may not be aware of it can get this information. And that's basically what the video was about, despite some of the more critical comments. There weren't a lot of them, there were just a few, and I've addressed each of those individuals to kind of explain to them what was going on. But nonetheless, guys, you can check those out, either the links down in the published section below as well as the video itself. Countries want to ban weaponized social media. Now, that's quite an inflammatory statement, but that is one of the headlines from this article that I want to read from. Sydney, Australia. What if live streaming required a government permit and videos could only be broadcast online after a 7-second delay? Very similar to how the professional industry in broadcasting does it. What if Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter were treated like traditional publishers, expected to vet every post, comment, and image before they reached the public? Now, we can kind of see what's going on here. And in the next segment, we're going to talk about Article 11 and Article 13 out of the UK. But here we're seeing this happen, say, for example, because of what happened in New Zealand. But the thing here is that one of the things that we appreciate and value in the United States is our freedom of speech. Now, it isn't just the First Amendment of freedom of speech just for speech. Of course, there's other parts to that. But nonetheless, the thing here is in the United States, we have at least the freedom and or the luxury to express ourselves. Now, the definition of the types of content that we can express, of course, falls within certain guidelines, because free speech doesn't mean anything and everything. There are exceptions to it. But within the boundaries of presentation and what people do on YouTube and on social media, typically it doesn't really go into those areas. And if it does, for example, like inciting violence, for example, would be one that would not be covered under freedom of speech, as well as just deliberate and intentional lying, defamation of character, and those types of things are not carried under free speech. But essentially what seems to be happening here is that these countries who may not be accustomed to this level of engagement or dissemination of information, because as we know, information is power. And I would have to say that, and now this is going to be a little bit of a cynical, sarcastic statement here, but I would say that this is kind of regulated to what globalists are wanting to try to do to social media, and that is that some of these countries, even say, for example, like China and certain parts of the world, block information out of the United States in particular, or out of certain countries because of the type of speech and information that is disseminated among our country and some of the Western countries in the world. Now, Michelle Malcolm is a political individual, a writer, pundit. She appears on TV often. She received a notification from Twitter not too long ago from the government of Pakistan, saying that statements that she made were illegal and criminal in their country, in Pakistan. Now, there's really not anything Twitter could really do about it, nor is Michelle Malcolm overly concerned about it, because she's not in Pakistan, she's in the United States, and there really isn't much Twitter can do about it because she's an American citizen. Now, she didn't say anything that violated the rules or terms of service of Twitter. She simply made a statement that was inflammatory to the belief systems of Islam, or at least the aspects, I think, of Sharia or something like that. But nonetheless, what we have here is a very concerning situation where we're seeing globalists start to move, the movers and shakers of other countries, trying to limit information and content that's being shared on the internet. Now, here in the United States, we also have what's called Section 230. And Section 230 protects platform users from any content that the creators may create that would then hold them liable for what these particular producers or creators have done. So Section 230 is a very, I guess, a very protective law of platforms, because when it comes to an individual, say like Alex Jones, or most recently Tommy Robinson, who has been pretty much eliminated from all the platforms but YouTube, but as of this week, they have pretty much put him in what's called limited state. In other words, if you try to search for Tommy Robinson on YouTube, you may not find his channel. And if you go to his channel and you go to his videos, there's going to be disclaimers, there's going to be these warnings and other things before you watch his content. So they're making it very difficult for him to produce and do his content. Not the United States, okay? Not even the tech giants here in the United States, but his own government, the MPs there in Parliament, that are making it difficult for him to be able to disseminate information. And that's basically what we're seeing here out of this article from Australia and even parts of New Zealand. But nonetheless, we will keep an eye on this to see kind of how it expands. And I will leave a link down to this particular article in the published section below. Last week and into this week, we have heard a lot about Article 11 and Article 13, because as of last week, these particular proposals have essentially passed. It is now a formality for them to be introduced and then enforced. So let's take a quick look at what these articles are. Now, what is Article 11? This measure aims to force companies, mainly search engines, who feature snippets of other people's content to pay them for using them. So even in this Friday vlog right now, when I tell you guys to go down and click on the links that I'm providing down to you to these source articles, I would have to then pay these sources, not only me as the creator. Now, I think what this is in Article 11, these are very confusing and very vague language, but as I understand it, when they mention mainly search engines, the idea here is, and what we understand, is that these search engines or the platforms are going to be responsible for the most part in this Article 11 aspect. In other words, it's like, so if I was in the UK and I was making this video as a UK citizen, and I linked some of the articles that I'm going to link down to you below, then Google would be responsible, and even YouTube would be responsible for paying for that content, and or the content creator may then have to pay for the ability to use those links. This means that companies who use other people's headlines, like I'm using, like for example, when I mention these headlines for the news here out of Sydney, Australia, and what I would put, say, like down in the published section when I feature some of these highlights and then the links. This means that companies who use other people's headlines and first paragraph of text will be forced to pay in order to display them. Now, this isn't particularly unusual, because I can remember, like, when I first started as an Apple specialist and iTunes was first coming out and Apple was featuring a lot of their music, a lot of it was very proprietary, and the EU was pursuing Apple because of the content being proprietary, because I guess the people in the EU at the time were complaining that they couldn't share use their iPod to share on other computers and stuff, and that was of course intentional. What is Article 13? Now, here's Article 13. Article 13 is something we have talked about here on the channel before, as well as probably the most common and most known of the particular introductions by the EU. So Article 13. This measure forces technology companies to police the content on their sites for the first time. Okay? through the means of content filters that are able to scan what users are trying to upload for copyright violations. Guys, look. Google is probably the most leading of all of the tech industries right now when it comes to AI. And then, of course, that information is shared by other platforms. But the idea right now that an AI, or no, let me correct that. The idea that YouTube or other content platforms would be able to monitor everything that's being uploaded that creators are making is just not practical. Let me give you an idea. We hear this all the time when we go to the YouTube creator days and visit with the managers and people from YouTube, and that is that every minute on YouTube there is roughly 400 hours of content being uploaded to YouTube every minute. And the EU is basically telling the tech giants that, hey, if mostly users in Europe, of course, or even, well, users in Europe will be faced with their own problems, right? So if you're a content creator in Europe, you got your own problems. You got to deal with the copyright issues. You got to deal with copy strikes. You got to deal with mass flagging. You got to deal with all these other issues. Now the EU is going to try to hold the platforms responsible for the content that's on their channel. But like I just talked about earlier, Section 230 here in the United States protects platforms from being punished from being punished for what their users may be doing or what their users may be creating on the content. Now, the thing is, we do have filter systems and so forth on YouTube. We've talked about them before when it comes to demonetizing our videos because of language and things like that. You know, even the certain terms we use, the way we title them. I've been going back and forth with YouTube for, I guess now, almost 6 years over some of my Second Amendment content that I created. I made some documentaries concerning the Second Amendment and the rallies that we had at the capitals and the rallies across the United States. And so what they're basically trying to do here, it looks like, or the EU is trying to do, is trying to hold not only the individuals responsible for content, but also the platform, the tech giants, hold them responsible. And this is just, it's absurd because apparently I would like to believe that the EU members are reaching out to the tech giants. I know they're doing that because YouTube made a dedicated video about this within the YouTube community about how they're trying to deal with and comply to some of the EU rules. And in my opinion, the best way to deal with it is to shut off the UK and Europe. Period. You're done. That is a frightening, disturbing, troubling, and almost unthinkable idea that Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, whomever is just going to say, you know what, we don't want to deal with it. We're just going to cut off the UK and the EU altogether. I can only imagine the chaos that would create if these tech giants decided that, hey, you know what, we don't want to deal with this nonsense anymore. We're cutting everybody off. Now, the thing that I like about YouTube, the thing that I like about Instagram, the thing that I like about American social media is that these platforms provide people in these countries an opportunity to make money, an opportunity that isn't typical within these countries' limitations, right? Like to start a business in Europe or in the UK is far different than being able to start a business in the United States. Now, they all present their own sets of challenges, but the amazing thing about YouTube and or social media in the United States is it has given people in these countries the ability to make money producing content that they enjoy, that they're passionate about, and they can actually, make a little bit of a living. They can actually, be very successful at doing this. And it's awesome. It's amazing. And now the EU wants to interfere with this because of these minutia, innocuous details that can happen. One bad apple is going to ruin not only the bunch or the basket or the grocery store or the farmer, it's going to ruin an entire country. I mean, think of all of the users that are in the UK and that are in Europe, that are on YouTube, that I watch, that are followers of our content. And sometimes our content here in the United States is blocked by their countries already. Is already suppressed. There's content that you guys can watch. Like some of the people that I like to watch, like Styx Hexenhammer. His content is completely blocked in Germany. You cannot watch sticks in Germany at all, period. As a matter of fact, even here in the States, I watch sticks every single day. I watch just about every one of his videos every day, and it's very rare that it's in the recommended or suggested. Now, he's not blocked, right? So I can look up Sticks, Hacks, and Hammer and see his channel. I can watch his videos, nothing suppressed. He does not use monetization on any of his videos, which is what I want to get to now. So, creators in Europe, what they would probably have to do as far as when it comes to YouTube, or at least some of the things they can do, is they may have to just disable monetization on their videos entirely, but that doesn't solve the problem, right? So they can use things like Patreon, and they can use Subscribestar, which are third-party platforms that allow them to invite their fans to this particular site. It would be Patreon or Subscribestar, which is a third party. It allows them to interact with them. In other words, at certain tier levels, they can pay to have access to forums that the user creates, chat rooms, and live video feeds and things like that within Patreon and Subscribestar. And that's an awesome feature that allows them to earn, a little extra money. Also, so people in Europe and in the EU also, who are big YouTubers, say over 100,000 and stuff, or maybe even less, have merchandise. They sell cups, they sell shirts, they sell magnets and keychains and whatever little knickknacks and things that that their channel offers. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how this is going to unfold. And I think this was poorly thought out, which is not unusual for the EU to do. And if there isn't any other examples of why I don't like the EU, this would be one of them, among many of them. And this is why I watch Brexit so closely, because there's a mindset, there's a cultural mindset that is different between the United States and other parts of the world. In the United States, we really value our individualism and our abilities to exercise our liberties. That's a huge thing here for Americans. Many people don't realize the amount of liberties and freedoms that they have in this country until they go to a foreign country, or until they hear stories about those countries like we're hearing about now, particularly, say, for example, with Tommy Robinson. Now, the most egregious of things that we've seen lately, at least as far as social media and the tech giants, was the deplatforming of Alex Jones, right? Okay, so it's important to note here that Alex was not shut down by our government. He wasn't shut down by our authorities in government or authorities in general in his city or in his county and stuff. He was actually targeted by the tech giants themselves and special interests and stuff like that. So there is a difference between that sort of censorship here in the United States and just outright censorship across the board in Europe, which their agenda, their narrative is to just control information that's being shown here in the United States, or even in their own countries to us here in the United States, and so forth and so on. But nonetheless, we're going to continue to keep an eye on this. This is very concerning. It's very concerning to me as a content creator, because I do voiceover work for the Lost History channel and Light Up the Dark. This could affect him as well. It could affect everybody. It could affect a lot of people. So them thinking that they're trying to protect the citizens or protect their nations or protect whatever ideologies and philosophies and worldviews, whatever they're trying to do, it just is a little more than is necessary. And the demands that they're trying to make on the tech giants about being able to filter and vet, and it's not practical. Nonetheless, guys, I will leave a link down in the public section below, because I am allowed to. In the United States, I'm allowed to leave you a link down in the public section below, so you guys can check all that out down there. All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up for this Friday vlog. I want to thank all you guys for the likes, shares, and comments that you provide each and every week. And, of course, if you haven't already, guys, go ahead and click on that channel icon appearing right there on the screen to subscribe, along with that notification bell, so you guys will know when the next Friday vlog is available and the additional content that's here on the channel. And I will see you guys next Friday.